Hey, hi everyone, very good morning. Welcome back to our free Python certification program. In this video, we are going to talk about functions. Now, before we get into functions, let's have a quick review on all the topics which we have covered so far. So we have started our journey with respect to variables, yes, and then we have covered data types, and then we have also covered operators. And then in control flow, we have covered keywords, comments, conditional statements, and we have also covered loops and indentations, right? So today's main focus is going to be functions. Okay, so these are not any kind of birthday functions or marriage functions. Okay, these are different types of functions. All right. So let's get started. Now, before we dive into this, let's try to see what are all the topics we are going to cover in today's things. Okay, in functions, what are all the things we are going to learn? Right. So the first thing which we will be looking into is what is a function? All right. And then we will be going with different types of functions. What are the different types of functions? There are various functions, but we will be dealing with the most useful ones. Okay, various types of functions. Okay, and then we will also see how do we define a function, right? And then we will look into an example and why do we need a function? Those are all the things also which we are going to look into. Now, one more thing before we get started, I just want to mention this is usually we go with Jupyter Notebook for our coding, right? So today we will be using one of the different IDE. If you remember IDE, we have already studied, right? What is IDE? It is nothing but integrated development environment, right? So in today's class, we will try to explore Spider IDE. Okay, all right, so let's get started. Okay, 1 second. Yes. All right, so functions. What is a function? Right, so that's the basic thing, right? What is a function? So see, if I put it in very simple terms, a function is nothing but it is a block of code, okay, which takes certain arguments as input. Right? So functions take certain things as input, some values or something. It takes that as input. So we refer that as arguments or parameters. Okay. So it is going to take some arguments as input and it is going to do certain calculations. Okay. So think it like a black box or okay. In that we are giving some inputs. It is doing some calculations in that. Okay. And then it is giving us the output. Right. So after doing certain computations, it returns us the output. Okay, let me repeat. What is a function? It is a block of code like a black box, which takes certain things as input. Okay, and it gives us the output. All right. So this is our function. Okay. Now, if you go with the definition, see in Python, function is some reusable code. Okay. Why is this reusable now? Right. So this question we might have, right? See, one thing we need to understand is once we have defined a function, right, we can use it n number of times. It is not compulsory that you have to only use it once. Okay, so let's take a very simple example. Let's take, I'm writing a function for addition of two numbers, A and B. Now, when I'm doing the addition of these two numbers, so first I'm adding 1 and 2. Okay, 3. Then do I need to write this logic again? No. I can again just say 3 plus 3, 6. Using same logic. Okay. So basically what we are doing, I'm defining this only once here, correct? But I can use it n number of times. Okay. This is what a function is. Okay. Then next, what are the different types of functions? See, we have various types of functions. We have inbuilt function, we have recursive function, we have user-defined function, lambda function. Okay, but major two are the one which is inbuilt and user-defined function. Okay, then we have recursive, lambda, all those things we will be studying as we move further. But these are the two major functions. Okay, all right. Now, what is inbuilt function? See, inbuilt function is something where we said that it is a black box, right? A function is a black box. Inside, it is doing certain computations. It is doing certain computations. Now, what it has to do, it has already been defined. Okay, so what calculation it has to do, it has already been defined by the developers itself. Okay, that is the reason why it is known as inbuilt. See, again, the name is very important. Inbuilt functions. Okay, it is already present in. We need not to build these functions or we need not to define these functions. Those functions are inbuilt functions. Can you give me an example of any inbuilt function? Come on, think. Any example of inbuilt functions? You might have already used if you have started, right? So till now, if you have practiced, you have definitely used some inbuilt functions. The very first program what we did was to print hello world. We have used one function. What was that function? Print function. That is an inbuilt function. Because what has to be done when I'm calling that function is already been defined, right? I need not to define it again. It's already been defined. Okay. Now, what is user-defined function then? User-defined function is a function which we have to define. Okay, Nasir, I still have confusion. I did not get a clear picture. Okay, don't worry. We'll look into those things in detail. But in the layman terms, if we see what is a user-defined function, a function which has been defined by the user. Who is user? You, me. The person who is going to write the code is user, right? So a function defined by the user is a user-defined function. Okay, so the example of inbuilt function is input, print, right? So now we'll also take the examples of user-defined function, okay? But before that, we will just quickly try to understand more about predefined functions or inbuilt functions, okay? Remember, this is also one of the name which we can use for inbuilt functions because the logic has already been defined. It's a predefined function or inbuilt function, okay? Then next, here, see, print function. Now, what is happening in background? See, whenever I say print function, I will use this brackets, correct? Right. Now, what will happen is whenever I call this function, the logic for this function has already been pre-written. Okay, this logic has been already been defined in where? It is stored in the memory itself. They, developers of the Python, right? They have themselves defined the logic. Okay, so we need not to worry about that. We just call the function, it will come into our work. Okay, so this is how we will call it. Remember, if you remember, we have installed some libraries during installation of Python, right? In those libraries, what are the things present? These things. Okay, now it is saved into our memory. And when I'm calling, it takes that and it brings it here. Okay, whatever is there to print, whatever is there in within that bracket, it will be printing this. Okay, now see, we are executing a code. Let's take an example. Executing this, and then we got a print function. So what Python will do is it will go and it will take the function or what it has to do, right? From there, it will go and do the execution. If I call print function, what it has to do, and then it will return the value here. That's it. Okay. Again, this might be a bit confusing, but once we see user-defined function, then we will come back to this predefined function. Okay. Again, we will come back. Then we will get a clear picture of these things. Okay. So now let's take input function. It's also one of the important user-defined sorry, this is a predefined function. Okay. So what we have to do, all those things. So it takes some inputs, right? So those things has to be defined and that has already been defined. So whenever I'm calling this input function, it is just taking this input. Okay, right. Now let's talk about user-defined function. Okay, again, after this, we will go back to the input function, right? I mean, this one, inbuilt functions. Okay, see, what is a user-defined function is, this function is something where we user, who is user, right? We are the users. So we have to define this function. This is a user-defined function. Okay, Nasir, I'm not getting a clear picture. Can you take an example? Okay, let's take an example. Right. So before we go into the example, let's try to look into the syntax. Okay. So what is the syntax again? See, syntax is something where it will be defining how we have to write the code. Okay. So what is the syntax for user-defined function in Python? Right. So first thing we have to do is we have to use a def keyword. It is mainly used for defining. Okay. So I'll say def. Okay. Def keyword. This is used for defining. Okay. And then we need to give the function name. Okay. What is the function name? What we have to perform, that function name we have to give it here. And then we need to pass on some arguments or parameters. Okay. And then after that, what we have to do in that function, we are going to write. Okay. This is the logic. So this, we are defining a function and we are giving it a name, right? But inside, if you remember, what is a function? It is a black box which does certain combinations or computations. What it has to do, it is defined in the logic. What are the inputs we have to give? It is defined here. Function name. Arguments. Arguments are responsible for inputs. Okay, what is the function name? This entire function's name is function. Okay, let me again repeat. We start with def keyword and then we define a function. Okay, and then we are going to pass on the arguments. These are going to be our inputs. Okay, and then we are going to define the logic, whatever we want to write, whatever the computations we have to do, right? All the computations which we are going to do is defined in this black box. And then we are going to return the results. Okay, Nasser, what is this returning a result? See, again, we need to remember one thing. Once I define a function, don't you think I can use it multiple times? Or is it just I have to only use it once? Right? Once I define it, I can use it n number of times. Right? Now, once I've defined a function, we can use it a number of times. Okay. So let's try to define a function. Okay, inputs. And one thing we need to remember is we will be closing it with colon. Okay. Why? Because again, we have studied this in indentation. Whenever we use the colon, the next line starts from one tab space or an indentation so that it represents everything belonging. This is the part of this function. Okay, and then we return a function. Okay, we were talking about returning a function, right? So here, when I'm taking this function, okay, and I'm writing and defining it once. Now I can use it how many times? N number of times and anywhere, right? So I need to call this function.
Hey, hi. So yeah, we were talking about the calling of the function, right? I think we got cut off in middle here. So let's continue. Okay, so we have just seen what is this return function. Okay, now let's take one example and let's try to understand this. Okay, before that, let's see one more very important thing that we have already seen this and I've already mentioned it. But again, I want to bring it to the attention here. We can see when I'm using this double colon. Right, I think we have already spoken about this in our indentation. So whatever the next line is, it is going to be after a tab space. And this is going to be the body for that particular function. And anything I'm moving about, see, if you see here, this particular line has been moved apart from the function. So this is not a part of a function. Okay, it's a separate code and this is a function. All right. Then next. What else is there? Okay, very important thing we need to understand is there are various types of arguments available in the Python, right? What are arguments? Arguments are inputs. Okay, so we have different types of arguments where we have positional argument. Okay, so positional argument is something where let's take when I'm defining a function, we will also be providing the parameters x and y. Okay, we'll talk about this in the coding as well. And when I'm calling a function, okay, this is a defining of a function def. And when I'm calling the function, okay, there as well, we will also be passing this parameters 10 and 20. Now, what will happen in the positional argument specifically is this 10 will go and sit in X and 20 will go and sit in Y. Okay, so again, when we are studying the advanced Python, we will try to go in much detail of this. Okay, but for now, let's try to see, let's try to remember what are all the different types of arguments. We have key arguments. Okay, then we have default arguments, and then we have arbitrary arguments, and we have keyword arbitrary arguments. Okay, now let's do one thing. Let's take one simple example to understand Python functions in details. Okay, now before that, I would also like to address one important point here. So this is actually going to be a free Python certification program, right? Now, how do we get that certification? That I think many of you are asking us, how do we get those certifications? So the process is very simple. Okay, watch all the videos of a playlist, right? And post that, we will go with one test. And for that, firstly, you have to register. And once you have registered, we will go with one test. And then we will be able to show out the certificates. Okay, I hope that's clear. Okay, now let's jump back into the coding aspect. As I've already said, in this particular video, we are not going to go with the Jupyter. We will try one more different IDE. So in this video, we'll be looking into spider ID. Okay, so let me quickly share that. And firstly, I'll explain you the interface of spider ID, and then we can get started with the programming. Okay, right. So this is the interface of my spider ID. Okay, here, what do I have? This is the place where I'm going to write all my codes. This is the place where all of my variables will be available. And this is the place where it just executes, or it's like my console. Okay, it's like my terminal. When I want to install the library, I can install it here. Okay, so let me delete this variables. All right, so let's get started. So first, let's talk about, let me just get my laptop a little bit closer. All right, okay. So first, let's talk about inbuilt function. So what are the different types of inbuilt function? The very first program which we have worked, right? I'll say print. Okay, I think PRI and print. Okay, I'm going to print 0. Okay, this should be inside. Yes. And when I execute it, see, here you'll be able to see the output as well, right? So I'm printing the 0. Okay, again, this is the place where I'm going to type all the codes. This is the place where my all the variables and even the plots will also be saved. Okay, and this is the place where I'm getting all the outputs. Okay, so then one more, maybe let's take A is equals to 10 and I'm going to take B is equals to 20. Okay, I'm going to execute this. So let me firstly erase this. B is equals to 20. All right. Now, when I execute this, this variable will be created and stored in where? In our variable explorer. You can see here, right? Variable A, what is the type of this variable? Integer, and the value of this variable is 10. Okay. Now, let's talk about functions. All right. So firstly, let's write a function to define a greeting. So if someone comes in, I want to just define the greetings there. Okay. So I will say def, maybe I'll say just greet, Greet, greet. And again, remember, open and close the parameters, okay, or a parenthesis. So we are defining a function. Okay, we are giving this def keyword, and then we are giving the function name. Okay, post that function name, we will be ending it with colon, greeting. Okay, now what I want in this function is, I'll just say print hello, good morning. Okay, I'm just printing hello, good morning here. Okay, now I'm just going to define this function. Okay, let me execute this. All right, so if you can see, has it been printed? The good morning, has it been printed? No. Why? Because see, I have defined a function greet and I have saved it in my memory that whenever it is called, it has to return hello, good morning. Okay, now one more concept I want to just quickly introduce here is, in functions, we have defining of a function. Okay, so what I've done here, this is the defining part of a function. But whereas for inbuilt functions, I need not to define, I'll directly call it. Right here, you can see I've directly called the function here. But when I'm talking with respect to user defined function, here I have to define the function. I've defined the function. Okay, now I can call it any times, n number of times and anywhere. Okay, so let's take, I'm saying print, I'll say maybe hi, print hello. All right, so I'm defining this. Okay, I'm printing hi, I'm printing hello. See, it's giving us the output hi, hello. All right, now I'm trying to call this function. Okay, I'll just call this function here. Okay, how do we call a function? Just take the function name, whatever we have. Okay, so this is the function name which we have given, right? Yes, that's it. That's how we call the function. Give the function name and just execute it. Hello, good morning. Did I say anything about hello, good morning here? Did I mention anything about here? Hello, good morning. No, right? It is taking from here. So I have defined the function here and I'm calling a function here. Okay. And is it compulsory? I only have to call it one time, or can I only use it one time? No, we can use n number of times. Right, so we have covered this. Okay, so when we can just call the function and we can use it a number of times. Okay, now let's talk about addition. Okay, I want to write a function for adding of two numbers. Okay, so what we have to do, very first thing, we need to quickly define a function, def add underscore function. Okay, I'll just say fun and open and close a bracket. Then we need to end it with semicolon. And then what we need to do, I want to take the inputs from the user. So what I can say, a is equals to int, and then I'll say input, and then I'll give enter the first number. First number, okay, and I'll just give some space, colon, some space, and I want to take same thing with b. Okay, so I'll say b is equals to int input input. Okay, and just take enter the second number. Enter the second number. All right, and let's take it in as small itself, space, colon, space. Okay, now after this, this will be taking the inputs from the user. Okay, I got the inputs. Then what I have to do, I need to take sum is equals to a plus b. Okay, I'm defining the logic here, and I need to return sum. Now what this does is, see, this is the defining of a function. So let me run this. All right, so it has been defined. Now it has stored this function into memory. Okay, we have still not used this function. We have just defined the function. So later what I'll do is I'll just take this add and I will call this function add fun. How to call the function? Just call this by giving the function name, execute it. See, it has executed and it has started. It is asking me two numbers. So I'll say maybe 5 and I'll say 20. The output is 25. Okay, even if you want, you can just maybe take it as return sum. And if you want, we can store this into the variable. I'll say result, right? Result is equals to sum. And then I can just say print, I'll say result. So whatever the result it is saving, right? So we can store it, whatever the result we are getting from the function, we can store it and then we can use it. Okay, so here I'm again running this function. It is asking me for two numbers, 20 and maybe 30. It's been, okay, so it's stored. Now it's not printing out because I'm not printing it out here. Now I will say print the result. It's 50. Okay, so this is how we will be using the functions. And in the next class, we will be discussing few more advanced topics slowly. But make sure, remember, you're practicing a lot. And if you have any doubts, please do comment it. Thank you. Take care. Until next time.